So we're going to start the discussion now, and I'm going to start with Susan and Nonso. The first question is for Susan and Nonso. So, we've seen how the emerging technologies have disrupt and interrupt the traditional model of providing financial services for customers and even the way financial institutions interact with each other. So my question is, how can these emerging technologies like blockchain, AI, cloud computing, how can they revolutionize financial industry and how businesses and customer interact and use money? I'll start with Susan first. How can AI, cloud computing, blockchain, how can they revolutionize the way we carry out financial services, how businesses are carried out, and how customers interact and use money?
Hi, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to be in this panel. Very interesting question we have here, where we talk about how the emerging technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing, how they revolutionizing the financial industry. Let's start with blockchain first, right? The importance of this emerging technology within our industry. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Susan. Yes, I wanted to say we can't hear you so clearly. You can increase your volume, please.
Is it better now?
Okay, it's a bit clearer now.
Do you mind if I change my device? Sorry, hold on. Let me just go off this. Is this better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is this better?
Yes, it's better.
Sorry, everyone. Please hold on. Disconnect my device.
Okay, so why Susan is trying to. Okay.
Okay, I think it's better now. Is it better now?
Yes, it's better. Way better.
Okay, let me.
Oh, Susan, you've gone mute again.
Okay.
We can't hear you. Okay, now we can hear you. You were muted for. Oh.
I'm not muted. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So I was just saying that how are the emerging technologies, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing, how can it revolutionize the financial industry? I'll start first with the artificial intelligence. I like to explain artificial intelligence as that intelligence you give to a machine to help you process information that the human mind probably cannot process at a very high speed. We process data and information in different ways. However, we've given the power to machines to say, you know what, take this data and take this intelligence and process it at a very fast pace and give me information that makes sense. So how does this old artificial intelligence, how will it revolutionize our space? One of the things that I've come to say is that it can help you give personalized customer experience to your customers. I'll go, typical example would be today, we bank with we currently have various banks. Some of us have been with a bank for over 5-10 years, and there are particular way we spend our money. There are people we make payments to on a monthly basis. There are people we do basic, they know how I use my card, they know the site I visit. What artificial intelligence can help the financial institution do for me would be how they can begin to study how I transact, my behavior, the type of transaction I do, and then they can begin to give me personalized banking experiences, personalized, like, you at the end of the month, Susan will transfer 2,000. The artificial intelligence can make the bank prompt to say, you know what, it is that time of the month, it's time for you to transfer 2,000 to this recipient because you do that on a monthly basis. And these are the little things that endears your customer to you. Another thing artificial intelligence also can help do in revolutionizing the financial spaces in fraud prevention and detection, right? We know today how, due to the emergence of the cashless policies, people are beginning to use the digital platform more than ever before, right? And what artificial intelligence is currently helping some banks do now is to be able to, because of the fact that it's beginning to study customers' pattern and direction of how they transact, they can easily detect fraud. So typically, my bank already knows I have a pattern of not transferring more than 20,000. So what by deploying artificial intelligence by mode of within their fraud detection parameters, the day they probably see an outrageous amount like 50,000 being transferred, they can easily prompt and say, no, there is something unusual in this transaction pattern. And they can either choose to stop that transaction or and then come back for me to confirm if that transaction is actually valid before they can go ahead and authorize that transaction. That's one way artificial intelligence can help prevent and detect fraud within the financial ecosystem, which is one of the things that is making it very hard for people to trust the ecosystem. Then when you go to cloud computing itself, it can help with cost saving. Prior to now, we know most founders or most businesses, once you want to start your business, there's this huge IT infrastructure that you have to pay for. You have to pay for costs for servers and the rest. But with the cloud infrastructure today, you can buy a little size of what's it called, memory or server space in the cloud, and you can begin to do pay as you go. So what that means for new startup is that you don't need to invest in IT infrastructure. You can easily just get the resource that you need at that particular point in time to start your business, and then you can begin to scale as your business begins to grow. And what does that lead to? It leads to cost savings, and because of the fact that you're saving costs, you're not paying so much to for your IT infrastructure. You can cascade whatever cost savings you have into the price for your customer. And then for blockchain, because of time, for blockchain, I would say that one of the things that endears me more to blockchain is how the smart contracts in blockchain can be used. Today we do lots of transactions, and there's sometimes when I want to do transactions with some people and I'm not really comfortable with doing transactions with them. So imagine where a situation where I have an automated contract with a customer where I'm saying, you know what, I want to buy this property from you, but however, I'm going to put this money in an escrow account, in an account that we both jointly agree is fine. And until we meet the terms of this contract, until you have delivered the C of O to me, until I've verified that this land is correct, before the system automatically triggers money to the buyer. What would that do for me to begin to bring more trust within the ecosystem? Why? Because there's an automated contract based on what you have agreed on. It is automated, and until the condition for that contract is fulfilled, fund does not move from one party to the other. So what would that bring? It would bring trust within the ecosystem, and also for faster cross-border payments. Imagine whereby you can do transfer from here to your brother in the US, and you probably really do not need so much intermediary. What would that do for us? It would reduce disruption. It will reduce the timeline it takes for transactions to be authorized. It will reduce the number of parties involved in cross-border transaction, and thereby also reducing the cost that it would take for someone to transfer money from one person to another. I think these are just but a few ways I think these emerging technologies can help revolutionize the financial sector.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. I mean, you've mentioned a lot: personalized experience, fraud prevention, get data on our spending habits, for cloud computing, resources, cost saving. Very interesting. So please, can I get your take on it, on how blockchain, AI, cloud computing can revolutionize how financial industry and businesses and customer interact with money?
Sure. First off, I must say, Susan's background is beautiful. It's really, really good to look at. And she actually really spoke about many of the things that I want to speak about. But starting from an AI perspective, as you mentioned, right, like AI is pretty much like allowing us to transfer some of our daily activities to heavy computers with high computing capacity, right? So pretty much in financial services, there's a lot of data, right? So with AI, you're able to analyze these data, very quickly and make smarter decisions, right? And those smarter decisions lead to improved customer experience. They lead to fraud prevention, and overall, enables businesses to make better decisions, right? Because the time it would have taken, one person to analyze gigabytes of data, AI is able to do that, in the shortest time possible. And you as a business or a financial technology company are able to, make smarter decisions around how you interact with your customers and what are some of the fraud prevention mechanisms you can put in place. And on cloud computing is really around like, enable you scale faster, right? There's a lot of fintechs coming up today. Previously, you needed to buy like, server infrastructure to be able to host your services, right? But with cloud computing, you're able to actually go from 0 to 1 in terms of like you have an idea and you're able to test it out with like real customers, right? And you don't have to invest so much, right? So you're able to scale up as quickly as possible, but also able to scale down and reduce your costs, right? Because like I said, like previously it was all like, server infrastructure, and that's like a fixed cost that comes with it, right? And what you find is that people were purchasing more than they needed, right? But with cloud computing, you're able to decide this is how much space or how much server space I need. And if I don't need that much, I can scale that as quickly as possible. And, I like the example she gave on blockchain, especially with cross-border payments. Like, in Africa, we complain about the fact that, cross-border remittances and payments is one of the most expensive across the world, right? Because of the fact that there's a lot of middlemen involved, right? But with, blockchain, you're able to carry out transactions secure and transparently, and also remove a lot of the middlemen, right? And by removing those middlemen, you're able to, make service more efficient and reduce your costs, right? So overall, I believe that blockchain will enable us carry out more faster, cheaper, and reliable financial services, which will enable financial services as a whole to scale.
Yeah, thank you very much. I like the part where you really ensured talking about scaling up and scaling down for businesses and the part of making smart decisions, both as a customer and a financial service provider. Thank you very much. So I'm going to Chema quickly. Chema, Amen. What are some of the benefits that financial services can expect from embracing for Nigeria here? Let's take this a Nigerian context now. What can they benefit from embracing these technologies? Our financial service providers. Chema, please. Chema first.
Hello, everyone. Good morning once again. It's good to be here. So I think even the earlier speakers have mentioned some of the potential benefits of embracing emerging technologies. And I would say at FinTech, we did a little bit of blockchain research, and there's over $29 billion in blockchain that's available. And it's speculated by 2030, the world will move on. So whether traditional banking models want it or not, people will definitely move on. And it's left for them to catch up, right? So I think financial services can benefit a lot from emerging technology in terms of increasing efficiency, right? While people will say that will take a lot of people out of jobs, but it also creates new jobs, right? There's still a lot of talent gap in these emerging technologies. This is where workers can also move to. So I think in increasing efficiency, and we also have seen this in recent times in Nigeria, how it felt like the IT infrastructure in Nigeria could not sustain the what we're preaching, right? The cashless policy we're preaching. It felt like the infrastructure couldn't sustain that. So that's also something the technologies would have helped us to do. I guess we'll talk about that as we go in the conversation. We also have something about security. The earlier speakers mentioned something about fraud detection, and that is a very big issue. A lot of Nigerians, whether we want to accept or not, are on banks. They do not want to use the financial services providers, the former regulated financial services providers, due to a lot of things, right? And in recent times, trust has also added to that, right? So people no longer also trust the system. But if financial service providers embrace these emerging technologies, you see it addressing fraud issues. You see it building trust in the system, right? But where I want to draw most on is in access to financial services, right? How this can position financial service providers to capture the uncaptured markets, right? There's something else that's to add aside from blockchain AI is how Nigerians have data skills that are not in the system, right? So everybody, aside from name BVN, which is formally recognized, there are other forms of data people have. Yes, in recent times, there's address verification, there's utility bills, phone bills, but there are also other forms of alternative data which this emerging technology can help us capture, right? And if you capture that and synthesize that using AI, that will give us new customer profiles that we can target better, right? This will, and I'm also about this in terms of not only access to opening bank accounts, also in terms of access to credit. The credit market is very uncaptured. There are a lot of reasons why these financial service providers do not want to give out credit. There are a lot of reasons, and it's well known, right? Risk of default is top of the list, right? But these customers who are prone to risk, right? They don't want to lend to you because they are not sure. You don't have name, you don't have BVN, you are not captured with the formal means of identification. But these customer profiles have optic data which can be captured. Yes. So as I was saying, these customers who are unbanked or who are not in the formal system have alternative data which we can capture using these emerging technologies to create new customer profiles. So, and with this new, any financial service provider that positions itself right now will be able to capture this market early on, because we see something happening with even the fintechs and the new payment service banks. Everybody's trying to already serve the bank's customers, right? And nobody is thinking about those who aren't banked, right? So I think that's also something, and that can set financial service providers ahead of time. And we've seen this happening in several countries, across several financial service providers in other countries. They are leveraging alternative data tools created by these unbanked customers to process the financial services for them. We can think of a lot of things: phone calls, airtime purchases, utility bills. These are alternative data tools we can use to create credit scoring means, create customer profiles to provide access to financial service for these customers. So I will stop there.
Oh, thank you so much, Chioma. I mean, as you're talking, I'm also thinking, I'm going in depth into my thinking now, because you've mentioned some key things relating especially to underserved. But before we get to the next question, which I think everybody would be curious to know, we're going to talk on this particular issue that you raised. I would just want Ahmed to give a quick, take on the benefits that financial services, that embrace this technology, the benefits that they can get from embracing these emerging technologies.
Yeah, it's very difficult to give any extra take after all of that, because I mean, every single point I had has been said. Yeah, so next time make me go first, please. Let me say some stuff before these guys, take all the points up. But I really like the point about financial inclusion, right? I think that everyone is focused on the same customer segment, and that more efficient services will make it more profitable to serve the unbanked. So since everyone's focused on the same customer segment, if you're reaching out to an untapped segment of the population, you can also increase your bottom line, that way. So the bottom of the pyramid doesn't mean that there's no money. It just means that, you just have to lower your costs in order to serve this segment. And if you lower your costs, that means you're making more money with the current, the segment that everyone is actually serving. And also another point I want to point out, I think the lady before also pointed it out, is like, if you really want to see the benefits, right, of new technology, you have to compare what these startups, the fintech startups, are doing with, the legacy banking, the legacy financial institutions. See the difference, right? Even in terms of, money transfers, just that, you can see the difference already. Like, I'm afraid to use my card with certain banks, right? But banks like OPay, like Kuda, those who are online, who are more efficient, you actually know that, okay, my money will get reversed, or, the transfer will happen a lot faster. So little everyday things like that, you can actually see the differences between the financial, the legacy financial institutions and these new fintech companies that are using new technologies.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This brings me to the next question. Before I ask the question, I just have some data here that I want to read so that we get the realization of what, the emphasis that all the speakers have been hinting on, which has to do with the underserved community. So Efina, Chema works with Efina. The 2012 survey, it showed that 34.9 million adults. That's about 39.7 of the adult population were financially excluded. Interesting. So only 28.6 million adults were banked. That's about 32.5% of the adult population in Nigeria here. As of 2000 and last year, 2022, CBN, they said the financial inclusion rate, the report they gave was 64%. That means like 34% of the adult Nigerians have no access to financial services like payments, savings, credit, and insurance. And CBN hopes to get this number up to 95% by 2024. That is next year. Wow, interesting. So we know some of the other challenges this underserved communities face. We are the proximity to banks. A lot of them don't have banks in their communities. And we also have the lack of access to technology, even lack of access to financial literacy, the low level of financial literacy. Talk about the infrastructural challenges, which we'll address later, illiteracy, So how can this, my question, I'm going to ask Susan first, and then I'll go to Chioma, and then I'll go to Mo, and so this question is very important. How can this emerging technologies accelerate financial inclusion, especially for the underserved? Chioma already started mentioning, she already mentioned other forms of opportunity like the credit markets capturing, new customer profiling. So how can these technologies, they excluded, how can they benefit from it? Putting into consideration that a lot of them don't have access even to technology. Some of them are still using future phones. So how can we bring it to the reality of Nigeria now to get the underserved to be part of this emerging technology that is impacting the financial services? Susan, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. And I think good contribution by everyone so far. I think Chioma has kind of like started that conversation already. I think for me, whenever I hear the word financial inclusion, try to get the undeserved to be part of your markets. One of the things that comes to my mind is, if you look at that sector, beyond the fact that you really do not have technology almost at the last mile, one of the things I used to say is, it is somebody that have money that will keep money in the bank, right? In other words, financial inclusion is not lack of financial products to meet those people's need, but I think it's more from empowerment. These are people that mostly what they're doing is just to sell their day-to-day to feed their family for that day, and tomorrow is from ground zero up. Feed my family and I continue. And now you're saying this person needs to be financially included. So I think one of the ways you probably can even include them financially is first to empower them. And how do you empower them? By way of grants and credits. And I think Chioma said something that resonates a lot with me. If you must give credit, how then do you give credit to people that probably do not have banking history? They do not have those traditional bank statements or bank accounts. We need to be able to score them, to be able to see if they're financially capable. And then she talked about something about alternate data source to be able to score these guys, to be able to see if they are actually credit worthy. There's so much data within the telecom space. Today we buy credits, we buy airtime, we do bills payments and the likes. Imagine if the fintechs or financial institutions have access to such large repository of data, and they can then begin to use artificial intelligence to fine-tune those data, to begin to see a pattern between how Mama Basira today sells buy airtime. How does she recharge her airtime? Those type of insights can then begin to give you information on how to serve those people. I think most times what we tend to do within our spaces, we stay within the urban area and think we want to include them. So even in trying to use emerging technology, we need artificial intelligence more than ever before to begin to look at their pattern. Artificial intelligence to be able to speak the language you understand. I'm looking at a banking app or a USSD payment system where by the time in Edo State, in one of my very thick village where they don't understand English, and they can dial USSD, and USSD will speak to them in the language they understand. Artificial intelligence can help convert those English language to the very, so that when they want to do banking transaction, they're doing banking in the dialect they understand. Again, I'll say digital identity, right? Digital identity in the sense that today, typically, if you have to open a bank account, you have to provide a form of ID. Let's even say tier one, but for the tier 2, tier 3, digital form of ID and the rest, these people don't have any form of ID. They don't have driver's license. But imagine a place whereby we can do digital identification, leveraging on the emerging technology, using your thumbprint. Somebody has a thumbprint, somebody has an iris, somebody has every other part of the body that they can use to identify themselves. I feel if we can use this emerging technology within the sector to localize banking to what they understand and how it relates to the environment, digital identity for them to be able to identify themselves using alternate means like the biometrics, the iris, beyond the traditional way we want them to identify themselves. I feel those people will begin to come within the financial sector and begin to transact. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mo. Can you give your opinion on this interesting sector of the underserved, how they can get included using this technology?
Okay, so first of all, I think that the services have to be made cheaper above all, right? In order to serve this population, it has to be cheaper. Looking at, for example, micropayments. When we had when the CBN policy came out and people couldn't pay, like the fees that were on top of every single transaction, that was a problem, right? When companies like Wave in Senegal have shown that without these excess fees, right? And over there, Wave is used everywhere. Like I lived in Senegal a little bit, and I paid a taxi. I paid, a little in a shop, 100 francs, which is like around 100 naira or something like that, right? It's small amounts, like, because those are the amounts. Remember how it was so difficult to get maybe a downfall, right? That was like, and this is what regular people use every day, right? How do you pay, right? The downfall driver who only accepts cash or won't accept the bank, bank transfer and stuff like that. The other thing is we should not dumb down the technology, right? I hate USSD. Has anyone ever used USSD to buy phone credit? If it takes too long, it cancels or something. It sounded like the miraculous cure for feature phones. How we use USSD to provide banking services, but it's shit technology. Sorry, pardon my French. We've seen a pattern. Look at the POS, right? How the POS replaced ATM, right? The whole ATM. You have POS agents. So this segment of the population, they tend to, even if they don't understand the technology, they're willing to go to someone who does understand the technology. So we start thinking in that way, we can create services around these, POS agents and people who can actually serve these communities. I think that's something that we often overlook. The market keeps sending us that way, right? You might create an app that does these bank transfers, etc., but you notice that there are these clusters of people who are doing so many transactions. I think that's the story of Kudi, yeah. They did that on Facebook, and then they figured out that, oh wait, there are these people who are doing a lot of volume, and they realized that those people were serving other people. Okay, so we need to start looking at technology in that way in our context.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that input. So if open our eyes to something else, which is the USSD. So it's not the life-saving technology that we think it is. Thank you very much. So Nonso, can I get your inputs before I go to Chioma?
Sure. I agree with what the previous, speakers have said. I think most importantly for me is like the digital identities, right? Because unfortunately, like over 60% of the population today doesn't have any form of identity. So they cannot even be captured in our existing framework or banking system because of the fact that You can't do any form of KYC on them. I think one of the icebreakers was actually, what's KYC, right? If you don't know your customer, you actually cannot now serve them. And I agree with more specifically, right? But I also disagree with the fact that, yes, they actually solves a problem, especially for the unbanked, primarily if you want a use case where they're actually able to carry out services by themselves, right? Because unfortunately, Nigeria is a low trust environment, right? We've seen the prevalence and growth of agency banking, but it's also come with, a lot of fraud, right? And one of the things that I worry or I'm concerned about is that a lot of the unbanked are quite susceptible to fraud because they don't know better, right? So every time you have to make a financial decision based off somebody, and that person can unfortunately take advantage. And we've seen and heard a lot of reports of that, right? But I think emerging technology can actually first off provide that, alternative digital identity mechanism that allows each of these individuals, because not everybody that's unbanked that's not literate. There's a lot of literate people that are unbanked, right? So how do we create identity mechanisms to capture them and then, make the services more affordable for them, and then we can actually, get them into the financial ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much. Digital identity. Okay, Chioma, please, can I have your take on this question?
Fanto, you invited me to a power packed session, and it's always difficult to say something after everyone has spoken. But I want to look at it from this perspective, right? When we say underserved, right? I think that what we define it as is those that are excluded entirely, right? They have no form of bank accounts, and those that are in the informal economy. What I mean by informal economy are women in the markets, a woman in the market that is selling tomatoes, right? She doesn't have a bank account, and if you come to buy her, you have to pay her cash. And if she goes to buy, she's going to get cash, and she's going to pay the Hausa man, because I even heard during this cashless stuff, the Hausa people, or like those traders that import goods, right? They refuse to take digital transfer. So this woman, cash is king for her, right? But this woman does Ajo, Esusu, cooperative, whatever you call it. She does that. Have we ever thought of how we can leverage emerging technologies to formalize this woman? Because she's in the informal market and she doesn't have, just like we say, you need to, the ideal standard is that you have a footprint in the formal financial service market, right? So you're able to get credit, insurance, pension, stuff like that, microfinance, right? That's why we want everybody to be formalized. But we have a huge chunk of the population, the rural people, the unbanked, even students now that are in these informal markets, right? And they are just there, and it seems like we have left them there, since that they're fine. Let's just leave them where they are. But this is a huge market, and these women are aware of financial services, but then for one reason or the other, they have decided not to use it. But if you address just that one, like low-hanging fruits that any financial service provider can take up, but I don't seem to understand the Nigerian financial service providers. But there's a huge lot of issues, right? Why that's not going on. But let me read also some facts from our 2020 Access to Financial Services in Nigeria survey. That 17 million adults are not currently making electronic payments, but these adults own phones and they are interested in mobile money. So why don't they have mobile money, right? And 31 million Nigerians are interested in mobile money services. But then the major reason that will encourage them to use mobile money services is if they understand how it works. There is a huge opportunity in leveraging emerging technologies for design and marketing. I think Susan has mentioned this, for financial education, and not just only for providing services. There's also something that we're thinking in the financial system space. A lot of people are coming in as FinTechs to provide services and fighting for license. But how come nobody has thought about the value chain of the entire financial inclusion ecosystem? It's not just providing the services. There are people that are supposed to educate these people. Financial literacy is a public good, which everybody should contribute to. But new players can leverage emerging technology to make this a huge market that if you start off ahead, you are ahead of the curve and you make profits by it. So we need to think about the entire scope of what that is. but this is a huge opportunity. Leveraging it for financial education, initial education to even prep these people. We have, for instance, in the insurance space, we have providers like that. What they do is they do mass market campaign, educate people, get them aware, and they are interested in micro insurance, and then they connect them to PFAs. That's a middleman who has created a niche and using, although we will not say entirely using emerging technology, but a niche market you can create to move the people in the informal market, people who are already aware, people who are just waiting for. It's not the absence of financial products, but it's also absence of financial product that suits people's needs. But then we have platforms across South Africa where it's a simple WhatsApp platform, and then most, let me say, but this is for insurance. The instance I'm giving is for insurance. Someone has built a WhatsApp platform that has onboarded like 10 PFAs. This is pension fund administrators on it. And the person goes to mass market campaign and tells people that is how you can access your insurance. You don't need to go to the office. You don't need to fill all those type of forms. But from your phone, you can dial this code and you have a list of insurance providers you can choose from. From the convenience of your home, you can transfer the funds to them, and they've built a system around us, and it's working for. So I'm really hoping that if there are any new fintech players here, we should think of how that and adapt it to our Nigerian context. We need to adapt it to our Nigerian context. If it works in South Africa, you have to find a way you can adapt it to Nigerian context. Then, in summary, I think there's also something that, aside from the high transaction cost, how to leverage emerging technology to build trust in the financial system ecosystem. One thing I'm also adding here is there's something I was reading this morning about offline transaction capabilities. The emerging technologies have abilities to lock down transactions that fail due to network issues, right? So when someone transacts, even as educated as you are still hoping and praying. You are doing a small prayer when you do a transaction that it goes through, or it doesn't bounce back, or your money is hanging somewhere that you have to chase the bank for 7 to 5 working days to figure that out. But in other countries, we see people, fintechs, leveraging the offline capability of blockchain, right? Transaction is pending and you can see it. When the network comes back on, it's pending and you'll be able to reinitiate the transaction, right? Then you are not now sure. It shows you success. On the other end, it shows failure and nobody is sure of what's happening. And the bank will take 7 to 10 working days to just sort out that problem. So I think opportunities are bound. For our Nigerian financial service provider, I think it's not far-fetched. There might not be any need to reinvent the wheel, but other countries, advanced countries, and even in African countries are leveraging this technology. We just need to find a way to adapt it to the Nigerian context, considering our low trust, low income, like Susan has mentioned, and a lot of belief system about them, with what has happened recently. The trust in financial system has further reduced. But I think this is an opportunity to build value chain services that can open up the market. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My paper is already full. A lot. Services to be made cheaper, POS agent, digital identity. We have products that can fit into the market better. Joma spoke about, the financial literacy part, education, which he says is a public good, and also alternative data source, data, USSD payment. A lot has been said, has been noted. Thank you very much. And I hope all of us listening to that are thinking of, that have idea that tended towards fintech or are thinking about what's an area they can look to solve problem and create a business into it, are listening so keenly because they've mentioned a lot of areas that you can take advantage of and with less resources. Thank you very much. Before I ask this question, I know we all want to hear this particular one about the challenges we went through the last 3 months. I will ask Susan first. What are some of the risks and challenges that are associated with adopting these emerging technologies? I know we've talked a lot about the benefit and what we can get, but what are some of the risks that are associated to adopting this technology?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fanto. I think
some of the risks is, they say there's nothing good that does not come with its consequences, right? So for me, I think one of the risks is the cybersecurity risks. Because of these emerging technologies, or the more people are coming online to transact and do business. So you see people who are now very vulnerable to cyber attacks, data breaches, and theft, identity theft, basically. So, and how does this happen? Because we begin trying to bring more people within the ecosystems. These are new technologies that we're testing out the use cases and how they can work. One of the things to lead us to the cybersecurity risks. So it's very important that while we want to employ all these technologies, the AI, the blockchain, and the rest, we begin to look at the risks, the cybersecurity risks it poses to people, to be sure that these similarly vulnerable people that we want to come to this ecosystem can really get the trust they desire, and not be easily compromised due to data breaches and identity theft online, as we can see today within our markets. Another one I want to look at will be regulatory compliance. We know how the buzzwords for blockchain, how it started, and then you then have the cryptocurrency, and suddenly just one regulatory statement kind of shuts down that entire industry. So while you're looking at this emerging technology, you need to look at it from the eyes of the compliance within the space you're in. Look at it from Nigeria. We have a very robust regulatory framework for how payments and how digital financial services should run. So while we're trying to adapt this technology, we must also look at it from the regulatory perspective, so that at the end of the day, you do not bring in this technology and is at variance with the regulatory nuances within the land. And for the last one, I'll probably say, I would want to add would be talent, right? One of the risks is talent. You need specialized skills for this emerging technology. We're talking about artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, and the rest. You need people with specialized skills to be able to operate this technology. And the space of Jackpot we have today in Nigeria, you do not want a technology whereby by the time you bring in the technology, and the only guy that seems to understand this technology, Jackpot tomorrow, you are left in limbo. So it's a risk and also an opportunity for people to begin to train people, so that once you're beginning to invest in this technology, you must have a pool of talent you can pick from to be able to manage this technology, so that once you're done implementing with this technology, you can sustain it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The cybersecurity is fraud, the data breaches, regulatory compliance, and the last thing you mentioned was talent. I hope we're also taking notes of this, because it's very important in understanding the risks and challenges that are also associated. So Nonso, this question is for you, because she mentioned data, and I know a lot of us have questions now regarding data, how data plays a role in all this. And you know, big data is already being used by the financial sector in terms of studying how customers interact with money, their spending habits. You know, how can financial services ensure that they are implementing in their implementation and using these emerging technologies, they're doing it in an ethical and responsible manner?
I think the first way is to ensure like data privacy and security. So there's global standards for data privacy and security. You have the for specifically with like card payments, you have the PCI DSS. But with respect to like data security, you have the ISO 2701 standard, you have the SOC 2 standard, right? I think the first step for financial services is to ensure that, you know, their systems adhere or, you know, comply to those security standards, right? Because first off, if you're collecting a lot of data, you need to ensure that, you know, there's privacy and security measures in place, right? And those standards, you know, ensure that you adhere to that. I think the second one is, which is actually quite like, you know, unfortunate, is with respect to data, right? What we've seen happen is like, you know, there's a certain class of people that because of maybe their low income earners, they actually get discriminated against with respect to like data privacy and security. So for example, it's like, let's do data privacy and security for like the big boys, but like for the small boys, we just give them whatever they get, right? So it's really to ensure that, that doesn't happen, and there's, fairness, and ensuring that, all customers as much as possible have, standard data privacy and security measures in place, right? And there's, global standards for compliance and certification with respect to that. And I think most importantly, in addition to this, is adhering to local, regulatory compliance also with respect to data privacy and security. We have, we have in Nigeria, we already have, data regulatory body, and also globally, there's the, yeah, I think that's pretty much a summary, right? You need to put those measures in place and also ensure regulatory compliance.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question I'm going to ask, I think everybody was affected by this. The new policy, the new Naira policy, a few months ago. Some people were stranded. I even heard in some cases some people died, because that's how trivial it is. And I think every one of us, everybody in Nigeria felt that pain of how we had to do with transferring money, no cash available, the high rates of, paying to get money from POS. So this question is for all our speakers, and I'll start from Chioma. Looking back at the difficulties and the challenges as a result of this new Naira policy, that happened about 2 months ago, what technologies could have prevented the headache and the challenges and the difficulties that Nigerians faced? I know we had some on ground, but what were the standard technology that could have been deployed to avert all these challenges that Nigerians went through?
Thank you, Fanto. So, let's look at the point of view. I'm looking at it that the deadline has been postponed to 31st December 2023, and it feels like the same thing is going to happen again, right? And what I will speak to this is from an opportunity point of view, right? There are a couple of months to that December deadline. What should we do? We missed it the first time. What can we do to prevent the loss that has happened? And things like that. The poor trust in the financial system now, people are still at banks trying to reconcile the money that they can't seem to figure out what happened during that period. So I would say one thing: we can leverage emerging technologies for financial education. And this is one thing that I want us to think in now, because social media played a huge role during that period, right? But we can leverage these tools yet again to prevent that by getting the public, because the policy on its own is fine, and there's actually nothing wrong with the policy. It was just the implementation and the estimating factors into the election that, if you analyze that correctly, that's the issue. But now, what we should shift our focus to is in the cashless policy, right? The importance of the digital economy, and how we can educate Nigerians to move. Cash is king actually everywhere in the world, but how we can encourage Nigerians to move from this cash is king policy to the cashless policy, right? That is one thing I think we should do going forward. Like I already said, some Nigerians are interested in mobile money, but then there's, for some reasons, why they can't access it, how they can't download it, the issues they have even trying to create an account, how it works, is actually where we should focus on, because the new deadline is coming, right? And so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. A lot of people, we talk about account opening, right? CBN did a little bit of account opening drive, but that the ball has been dropped again. This is the opportunity for financial service providers to pop that initiative and sensitize people. The deadline is coming again, right? What should you do? You open your bank account and you try to familiarize yourself with how to use it. this is what we should actually be doing now, right? And I also say this. M-Pesa started because there was a need. There was an urgent need to address remittances to the rural area. This Naira redesign would have also been a platform to skyrocket mobile money in Nigeria. But why did it fail? That's also something we should talk about. CBN gave out a lot of license, right, for mobile money providers. But what happened? Why wasn't this an opportunity for them to launch deep into the market? But then we have some success stories, right? OPay, everybody, the boat drivers, everybody was using OPay. Why did OPay stand out? These are some use cases we should try to study now, get ahead of the time, encourage people to open bank accounts and try to solve the issues with the Nigerian financial inclusion ecosystem before the 31st December deadline again. So for me, that's how I would put it.
Thank you very much, Chioma. Nonso, please, can we have your intake or insight on this challenge?
Sure. So I think I'll just continue from what Chioma mentioned about like OPay, right? So I mean, why is OPay successful today? Primarily because like the services are cheap and it's fast, right? And that's really what would scale, financial services given, the challenges we have, right? So speaking specifically to like, the policy, right? The policy definitely is good, but like, I feel like it was a bit rushed and early in the market that we have today. But I think the easiest way to solve this is definitely with mobile money. But I mean, if you look at mobile money and why we don't have, a lot of adoption of mobile money today, first off is lack of awareness. Second is actually cost, right? Is mobile money today cheaper than, transacting through your bank account? I can't specifically speak to that. And second, how do you actually onboard on mobile money if you don't have any form of identity? Which takes us back to, square one about how, blockchain can provide like, an alternative identity creation / verification method to actually capture more people, right? Because primarily people are going to continue to be unbanked if there's no form of ID verification for them. So I think like easy steps that can be taken now would be more of like, an identity drive, right? Like, okay, we don't have, alternative means to actually capture identity, but we have existing ones such as the NIN, which, doesn't take much time. You can do a drive to get more people registered, get their NIN, and then they can get access to financial services, right? I mean, there's the how long it actually takes you to get your official NIN card, but I mean, at least with the slip, right, you can get access to financial services. I think that can be like the first step to prevent what happened when the policy was first implemented. And also the policy in itself actually painted the picture of how the agent system is not scalable when there's no cash in place, right? Because basically there was no cash around. Agents couldn't actually like provide any services to people. And in fact, agents increased the cost of financial services, which made a lot of people vulnerable, which is why we need more people to actually get access to their own financial services and make financial services, fast and affordable to everyone, right? But it starts with them actually being able to be captured. And if they have, some form of ID, they can now get access to these financial services. And I think mobile money is the future, especially for, emerging market countries like Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Susan, I would like your take on this issue. How did it affect you personally? And what do you think can be done to how we can leverage these technologies so that we don't get affected again? Like Chioma said, if we are not careful, we might end up repeating the same thing that happened and we'll go through the same challenges of accessing cash.
Okay, yeah. How did it affect me personally? I think personally for me, maybe it is how it affected the people around me more, right? Because even before cashless, I've always been cashless, maybe because I've worked in the payment space for a very long time, right? But how did it affect people around me? I think I got to a point whereby I was forced to look for cash either in any way to send to my parents that are aged to be able to meet their daily needs, despite the fact that they had money. I was stuck with my nanny and my drivers that had to walk miles, kilometers to come to the house because they did not have cash to be able to pay for transportation. And then I think one of the things that struck me during the period was more from the fact that as good as the cashless policy is, there was not enough stakeholder engagement. As Chema rightly said, it's going to come again in December. Have we subspedal in terms of engaging the stakeholders, critical stakeholders that can make cashless policy work, the people within the transportation sector? I would think that more than ever, CBN, the bank, should begin to engage that sector, to look at beyond the solution you want to provide for them to begin to accept other means of payment beyond cash. Probably if the transportation sector itself, where people enter buses every day, maybe if that part of that puzzle was fixed, probably the digital, the cashless conversation would have been a different story, because we got to a point where we were able to convince Mama Basira in the market to collect transfer. For some, you probably see they'll come together and say, transfer to this auntie. She has account, she will give me my money later. But the part we could not crack was, how do I enter a bus and a driver tells me I'm not going to collect cash from you? How do I enter what's it called? Okada, and Okada master I'm not going to collect transport from you? So I think engagement within that sector needs to happen more than ever. Give them product, whatever form of product you want to give them, whatever form of discount you want to give them, whatever form of bringing them, opening accounts, that conscientization of why you should have an account, why accounts for this sector, transfers for this sector should be free, incentivize that sector so well that by the time the cashless policy comes again in December, and I want to enter a bus and I know that I can transfer because so much education has been done within that sector, I think it will really make that cashless policy a huge success. And then artificial intelligence, again, maybe again, for benefit of answer, beyond the fact that that policy was rushed and there was no so much time was not given to the banks to scale up their infrastructure, right? Now banks are beginning to scale up their infrastructure, and scaling up their infrastructure, and they're using emerging technology. That you can see some of them going on cloud, so that should the traffic hit them again after December, they will be able to adjust their storage space, adjust whatever infrastructure they have almost immediately, without having some of the failures we experience in terms of transactions happening within that place. So I think we need to have sector-based, those sectors that play critical role in the life of people, their day-to-day. Massive education should happen within that space. Massive solutions that can enable ease of payment within that sector. I think if we get it right within the sector, I think the cashless policy would be able to, the Naira redesign and the cashless policy will scale a lot faster for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope we're all listening and we are taking note of the educational parts. So if you are taking transport now, start asking drivers, if this thing happened again, would you collect? If I do transfer, would you take money? Or engage them? We go to the market, try to engage. I think people are now becoming aware of, even the use of mobile money because of the challenges we face. Thank you very much for all your input. So I'll go back to Mo and Nonso. So this question is for you. How can blockchain?
Sorry. Can I just say something about Suzanne?
Yes, you can. You can.
Yeah. So Suzanne, I love your point, right? Looking at that specific problem, right? Because that was a key problem, the transport issue. And I think that the payment startups need to do that. Look at those individual cases where there were a lot of issues, where there was a massive pain point, and focus on those issues to find solutions. I also want to go back to what I said about Wave in Senegal. I've never seen anything like it, right? It's not a crazy app. The simplicity of the app was just, it's a QR code app. I always thought QR code was useless. Like, what's the point of that technology? It's just fancy for nothing. But the app, it just has a QR code, and that's all you do. Like link up with other code, the two phones, and you're able to make the payment. I know that, if you look at a lot of payment apps, well, maybe not a lot, but I've seen QR codes inside some of our banking apps, payment apps. And the difference is that the QR code is just a feature. It's not the principal, method of doing the transaction. The beauty about it is that it takes away the time spent on getting, the bank number, and all of that. And you only need one party to have an internet connection, right, for the payment to go through. So Wave, they figured it out. If our fintechs here could take a look at that, they're doing it in Senegal. Like I said, I paid the taxi with it. I paid a store in a neighborhood store, bought I don't know, candy or whatever, and simple things like that, right? If you're able to do that, I mean, that solves, the transportation, etc. So that's something that I'm really hoping that our payment, startups, fintechs look at this as an example of what to do.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your inputs. They have been as clear as possible. So the next question I have has to do with our infrastructure. We're talking a lot about, how this AI can help us, but now I'm going to be very specific in terms of our weak mobile and internet penetration, especially in some markets, some communities, the lack of identification coverage, the limited payment rails. So Mo, my question is, how can blockchain improve the infrastructure constraints or deficits in terms of the mobile penetration in some communities or some markets, the lack of identification coverage, and payment rails? How can blockchain help in that area?
So I think the blockchain technology wouldn't really help like the mobile penetration per se. What it would help do would be help maybe in efficiency, right? In securing information, making sure it's accessible to all the parties, cutting out middlemen, right? Just bringing down costs and making things more efficient. But to the average user, that's not, they won't see that, direct effect just on the end price and how efficient now the service is, and maybe helping push through with instant payments and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you very much. Nonso, can you give your take as well?
Yeah, I also agree. I don't think like blockchain can solve for lack of internet penetration. But I do think it can actually provide like alternative payment rails that are faster and cheaper compared to like traditional ones. And I believe alternative like payment rails that are definitely faster and cheaper would improve, financial inclusion and get more people who are in instances where they can actually access financial services because of a lack of coverage to actually, transact, right? And I think the thing that I think I'm very bullish about blockchain being able to solve for is, providing like secure, like digital identities that enable us, solve that lack of identification coverage and capture more people into, the financial ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. So from this discussion, from what you and Mo just mentioned, because a lot of people believe blockchain can be able to do a lot of this. Blockchain can help more with terms of the identification and alternative payment rails. While if we're talking about the markets, the weak mobile and penetration to markets and communities, the mobile money can play a larger role in that area than blockchain. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for emphasizing it and reiterating it. And I hope we all have learned from this particular question about what mobile money can do more, and then what blockchain stands to do in the area of payment rails. So my last question is to all the speakers as well. This is the last question we're going to talk on. After this, please start getting your questions ready. After this, we'll give room for questions. You can type it in the chat box, and then we'll get to it. So how can financial services... So you have two more questions. The first one is, how can financial services, how can they stay firm in the competitive environment we find ourselves with? Imagine technology every day. There's one technology, there's a new technology, there's something else happening here. Mo, my question is to Mo for this particular question. How can financial services stay competitive? how can they stay competitive in an environment with new emerging technologies every day?
Okay, so I'm going to look at this as more of a question for the legacy financial institutions, because startups, right? The fintech startups, they're inherently, innovative, right? The innovation leads to disruption, so that's what they're here for. So it's more about. So I think this question is more about the legacy financial institutions. I think the key, right? Well, first of all, my background. So I used to work with an entrepreneurship support organization, and we ran ARM labs. That was ARM working with startups, right? And one thing I really enjoyed. Hello? Okay. One thing I realized there is that there needs to be more partnerships between these financial institutions and startups. These financial institutions, these companies, they need the startups. They need the innovation that these startups bring. Legacy companies, they have clear paths to revenue, right? We're currently making a lot of revenue, and for them to disrupt that, it's very hard, right? Because the focus is on, okay, this is making us a lot of money. Why would we want to kill the cash cow, right? So working with startups gives them access to this innovation and helps them, change. So I think that that's the number one way for us to see more innovation in these companies. There needs to be a lot more partnerships.
Okay, thank you very much for emphasizing partnership. I think we're still lacking behind in that area because obviously everybody wants to become a unicorn, but it's so important that you mention partnership with startups, and not just startup, but in terms of the innovation part to remain very competitive. Thank you very much. And my last question has to do with the future. What would the future look like with these emerging technologies, especially for Nigeria, for Africa? What is the future for these emerging technologies in our financial system here, the impact in businesses, the way customers interact? What would the future look like? For Nigeria first and then for Africa. I will start with Chioma. This is our last question, so I will take input from all our speakers. Chioma, please, can give your input on the future of these emerging technologies.
So I would say this, I would say two things, right? I mentioned something about a blockchain research we did with PwC, and one key highlight of that report is this: that the blockchain technology has potential to boost the global gross domestic product by 1.73 trillion in 2030. It is expected that businesses will use technology in some parts of these operations by 2025. And adoption benefits, right, will continue to materialize as we go forward, right? One thing and one future of blockchain, AI, big data that I see happening in Africa, Nigeria, I don't know if I've started that yet, but I see happening in Africa is leveraging blockchain to enhance customer experience. And that is one thing that, just like I mentioned, legacy or traditional banking models haven't entirely considered. You would want an account, then you walk into the bank account and look for a bank account, right? But the future of banking is that people are considering customer profile. It's called human-centered bank. That is where the world is moving across everywhere, even in health. It's called personalized medicine. In every other place, you are putting the customer first. And that will be the future of technology across all sectors going forward. People are going now to be building products around the customer experience because every customer journey is different. And you can't build a product and expect different types of customers use the same product, and you're wondering why it's not working. What is wrong with the product? It's not the product. Now in the future, I see where there are multiple customer profiles, multiple products, multiple services meeting the needs. but we all meet at the same point where everybody is included. But their journey to inclusion is different. And I see emerging technology really pushes frontiers. And I believe that people who start off now are ahead of the curve. That's what I think. That's what I think. I'll say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Chema just mentioned that we're going to see more of customized, leveraging customer experience in the future. Nonso, please, can I get your take on the future of this emerging technology?
I think emerging technology would actually, like, improve efficiency of existing services, make financial services convenient and accessible, but also, make them more inclusive and equitable, right? I think overall, right, what emerging technologies would do, just because of, like, for example, like AI, the computing power and like speed, I believe it would make, like, financial service more affordable. And especially in like developing markets like ours, right? With financial services being more affordable, more people get to use it, and that actually, allows for scale, right? I think emerging technologies will also like create like new business models and opportunities for innovation and growth, as Mo rightly mentioned, right? With Wave mobile money in Francophone Africa, right? Like, QR code was an existing technology, but they wrote upon that to actually use it as a means to actually simplify like receiving payments. And there have been like multiple applications that first off has led to them being a successful company, right? But also solving like important problems in their markets, right? So yeah, that's like my summary on financial services in the future.
Well, thank you. So the creation of new business model, like the QR code, is something that people will be able to take advantage of in terms of rendering financial services. Thank you very much. Susan, can I have your take on the future of emerging technologies? Susan, can you hear me?
Oh, no, I didn't hear you. Thank you. You call me. All right, I think for me, it would be more increased security, right? The future where we have AI embedded into our fraud tool that can do behavioral monitoring, look at our behavioral pattern, look at rule-based type of transaction type, and then it can proactively begin to stop fraud before they even occur. Why? Because they are personalized customers' experiences. You've been able to study your customer over time, and you know the transactions that are unusual. You know your customer in Lagos will never go to Kafachan. So there's a transaction happening in Kafachan, the system can automatically decline it. Why? Because due to the use of AI, they've been able to study my pattern, and it can proactively detect fraud and then reduce fraud, right? And I think, again, more than ever, you begin to see, you talked about new business model. I think for me, the business model have started emerging already, where you begin to have a lot of payment as a service platform, bank as a service platform, where people can begin to use shared infrastructure to be able to scale up their businesses before going to a more sophisticated platform, so that they can easily scale up their businesses. I think for me to be more from the security perspective, using the emerging technology, we would see more secure transaction leveraging.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. Mo, I'd like to have your take on this, on the future of emerging technologies for African nation, for Nigeria. How do you see us taking advantage of it? What will it look like?
Okay, so I mean, for Nigeria in particular, right? I think the startup ecosystem is what we have in Nigeria is amazing, right? It's like you can't compare it with. I mean, you can't compare other countries with what's happening here. right? The fintechs are really full-fledged, companies that are really solving problems. And I think that what we saw with, the cashless policy, they took note, right? I want to believe, I'm hopeful that, all the players took note and they see it coming again, and there will be solutions, that will be built to solve the coming, challenges.
Okay, thank you very much, Mo, for that input. So for the future, we've looked at the startup ecosystem here in Nigeria, taking advantage of the opportunities. We've looked at in terms of increased security infrastructure, that's studying customer behavior and the issue of fraud. We can know that, okay, we've studied this customer as a service provider, we know what this customer is capable of doing. The customer cannot spend this amount of money, so that's very important. And I'm really hoping we can get to that point where we can use this technology to manage the increased fraudulent online activities. And then we also look at leveraging the customer experience, which is also part of it. Knowing what the customer is like, their spending habits, when and how they make transaction is also very important for the future here in Nigeria and in Africa. So thank you very much for this discussion. Now we're going into the question and answer session. But before we go into this session, please, if anything has stood out for you, just tweet it at the Ventures Park. The Ventures Park on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Ventures Park as well. You can just tweet what has stood out for you with this discussion that we've had today. I mean, we've talked a lot about, we even went to discuss the issue that we faced due to the cashless policy, the new Naira notes that we faced 3 months ago, 2 months ago. We've discussed the issue of financial inclusion and how these emerging technologies can help us get more financial included. We've discussed the issue of risk and challenges. We've discussed the issue of data, the place of data and managing it. We've discussed regulation, how to regulate, these emerging technologies that are coming up. And we've also been able to talk about the advantages of how blockchain, AI, cloud computing can help us, take advantage of the emerging technologies, especially in our environment here in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. So now we're going to the question and answer session. So if you have a question, you can just put it in the chat box. You can put the question in the chat box. Okay, so there's a question already in the chat box, which, okay, I'll just go to now. I'll ask, with respect to, I think it was what Mo mentioned, what are the difference between USSD and QR code? Okay, someone is asking the difference between the USSD and the QR code. I think it was because Mo mentioned the difficulties and the challenges with the USSD. So someone is asking the difference between the USSD and the QR code. I think this is in respect to financial services. So does any of the speakers want to answer that question, or should I direct it to anyone of the speakers? Mo, would you like to answer the question?
Okay, sure. Okay, so QR codes, right? Think of them, okay. If you buy any product, right? Even Indomie, I think that there's a barcode, right? On the side of the packaging, right? So that's kind of the same system as a QR code. So a QR code might be designed differently, but it's meant to be, readable by, I don't know, by specific app or code or device. Okay, yeah. So it's kind of, that's what the barcode, that's what a QR code is, right? Now USSD is an interface on yeah, I don't know how to explain this. Maybe someone can explain it better than me.
So I'll say that USSD is a text-based communication between a mobile phone and an application on the network. So a USSD is, you take your phone, you're dialing the string of numbers, you say it's 737 hash, and then when you click on send, it goes straight to a mobile network, and the mobile network understands that 737 as we assign to a bank called, for example, GTB. It takes that message and forwards it to GTB, and then GTB interprets what you're trying to do. So what they've done is they've hard-coded various things at the USSD end when they're saying if you type 1, you want to do transfers, if you type 2, you want to do balance inquiry or airtime payments. That's trying to explain USSD, right? Whereas a QR code, as Mo has said, is just a barcode that you are scanning off your phone. So your phone has what's it called? You scan with your smartphone, and then it reads the message. For some time, you see some QR code, once you scan it, it takes you to a URL to tell you, for example, you go to some fancy restaurants, if you click on the barcode, it takes you to a URL, and then URL, they are seeing the restaurant's menu, right? And they are picking what you want to order. Or for financial payments, once you click on the barcode, the barcode has messages that's embedded inside. It then takes you to a page where it tells you, what do you want to do? Do you want to make payments, or do you want to transfer money? So you then input the amount, and that transaction is completed. So for the QR code, you're dealing with barcode, while for the USSD, it's the text-based form of messaging that you're using to make payments. I hope that is clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for answering that question. We also have another question here. Madid is asking, what are the difference between the Naira in your account and the money in the e-Naira? This is okay, it's a good question, the e-Naira. So the person is asking, what's the difference between the Naira you have in your account and the e-Naira?
The Naira you have in your account is e-Naira. The Naira is an electronic money, as I would say. It's just that one is seated with your bank, and the other one that is e-Naira is seated with CBN. So in other words, CBN owns one part of the money called the e-Naira. What you also have in your bank is an electronic money. You call it Naira, it's not fiscal cash, right? So it's still electronic. However, it is seated with, you can associate that saying it belongs to GTB, right? GTB holds the position for that fund. They are responsible for that fund. Whereas for the e-Naira, it's like you're banking with CBN. CBN is like the bank, and they hold the fund for the money in that. They're all electronic money. So either way, they're all e-Naira, albeit whoever is this, the side that is holding it is what define what nomenclature you want to give it.
Okay, thank you very much. And Chioma made a statement. I think she wanted to add this to what she said about the future of the emerging technologies. She said there is also a future for leveraging emerging technology for solving, I think ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance challenges of traditional banking institutions and financial institutions as a whole. Thank you very much, Chioma, for that, for adding that to the conversation. Do we have any more questions? Any more questions? We have room for at least one more question. Okay, so Mr. Nonso has left. Thank you very much for for contributing to the discussion. Okay, so now I will hand over to Ajibike while she'll be doing the concluding part of the webinar. We're going to be dropping off the link for the post-webinar assessment. It's just 6 questions, please. We really want your feedback on what we are doing. To be quite frank, that we are just working and we don't get feedback from people who have joined the webinar. Please, they're just 6 questions, so there's nothing too vast. And also for the winner, Bem Shima Peter, the winner for our icebreaker, please, we'll contact you. Don't go yet. Respond to the messages that will be sent to you. Yes. So I'll hand over to Ajibike. Ajibike is our programs manager at Ventures Parquet, and she'll be running off the webinar. Thank you all. And I also want to appreciate the speakers for this wonderful conversation. I hope we all have learned a lot, we've gotten a lot of information that we can use and utilize towards the coming future, nearest future possible. Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much, Fanto. You've pretty much done the conclusion. So I just like to say thank you everyone for being a part of this webinar today. Thank you especially to our speakers. We appreciate all the insights that have dropped for all the participants. Susan, thank you for carving out time from your busy schedule. Chioma, we appreciate all the insight that you delivered to the questions that we had during the course of the conversation. And then I'd like to appreciate Nonso in absence, Shell, that thank you very much for all the valuable insights you've given to everyone on this webinar today. We look forward to seeing the ideas that will spring forth from the conversation that has been held thus far. And we hope to engage you for future conversations as well, so that we keep inspiring our founders to ideate solutions that actually address the needs of the populace. All right, with that, I would like to say thank you.